Making a career as an artist in all capital letters is nearly impossible. Most people who try will not succeed. I have not truly succeeded. Most people won't. Because art, high art, that art, that shit that you want to do, that you're passionate about, comes and goes. It's something you do when you're inspired. It's what you do when you get the big idea and you really want to go for it. But whether or not your art is marketable is really about a stroke of luck. Whether it's marketable, whether it will find the market that it needs, whether that market is big enough to sustain you as a career, these are the variables. It takes an insane amount of luck to both be talented and marketable. And you need both if you want to make a career as an all-caps artist. Like, the most romanticized art careers, I feel like, are novelist and director. You know, because these are people who put out one chunk of art every few years. You know, this is someone who pours all their heart and soul into an idea for a novel, and that novel gets published, and like it has to stand up in this really difficult industry and be marketable enough to make that person's, you know, livelihood depend on just this one piece of art every few years. Imagine just one thing, and then 3 years you live off of that one thing. Being a film director, very similar. You know, director usually has a movie every 2-3 years, maybe longer. It's got to be massive. It's got to get so many people to care about it. Not likely going to happen. More likely you're going to be a filmmaker who can't make films your career. You got to have either a day job or you got to have a gimmick. And I'm using gimmick in a very broad sense of the term. In fact, I would just say any career is basically a gimmick. You know, let's say that you're an aspiring director, but you're working your way up through the film chain, and right now you're just working as a first AC. Someone who, like, is a... I can't actually describe what a first AC does, but they're involved with the cameras. Assistant camera. You're the first AC. That's your gimmick. That's something that you can do over and over again forever because it doesn't require you to be inspired. It doesn't require you to be an artist. It requires you to be a technician. It requires you to know how to do a job, but it does not require you to be an artist. So that's your gimmick, while your art is over here desperately trying to get big enough to succeed. And I think there are hundreds of thousands of artists out there who are making art that maybe they can even make a profit off of, but they can't make a career off of it. And I think where you really see the difference between a gimmick and a career very strongly is on the internet, with internet content creators, because most of us have sort of both. I mean, there's a lot of people who just have the gimmick, right? They do a gimmick every week. That's their thing. They keep pumping out the same kind of content, and they have a career based on that. They don't necessarily do big flashes of inspiration, big meaningful projects, but sometimes they do. And sometimes you can't tell the difference that much, or they're mixed in together. A great example of this might be someone like Casey Neistat, who does have broad enough reaching art that he could probably... The fuck was that? Subsist off his art for a while, but he's got the gimmick of daily vlogs, you know? And the daily vlogs are very similar to his art, but when he makes what he considers to be like a film, it's this much more inspired thing. It's something that happens maybe once a month, and he'll put together like something really different from the gimmick, even though so much of the technique is the same. And, I mean, you can easily recognize this with me, not just between my different channels, but even if you look at my main channel. My gimmick is I analyze anime. You know, I take apart shows and I tell you what's great about them. My art can be a bunch of different things. Sometimes my art is hugely profitable. The Asterisk War sucks. That's like an art project. That was a flash of inspiration, a thing I really wanted to do and brought to the world, and it's this big thing, and it just so happens that that art is also really successful. But also my art is my rap music that not very many people care about, that I put out like a single and 3 people buy it, and it's not, you know, but that is my art, but it's not profitable. I need the gimmick to back it up, because the art's going in too many different directions. The art can be anything I'm interested in doing right now. But the gimmick, that's the foundation. One of my favorite content creators on the internet, someone I've followed for a very long time, is Ben Yahtzee Croshaw. He is a, very famous video game reviewer who does these little 5-minute videos that he makes for The Escapist, just reviewing whatever new video games are out. He's been doing it for over 10 years. He's basically the only reason anyone cares about The Escapist whatsoever. And even then, his audience is probably bigger on YouTube. But Yahtzee, that's his gimmick, is that show, Zero Punctuation. It's basically the same show every episode. And he's great at the gimmick. He's always funny, he can come up with new jokes all the time, but he said that he makes those videos in like 2 hours. Most of the job is that he plays the video game. And then, once a week, on Saturday, he compiles his notes, writes a video real quick, edits it together in about an hour, and it's done. 2 hours or so. Video's done. That's his career. That's the gimmick. But in the meantime, this man makes entire video games. He used to release them for free. He only started charging for them out of sort of a moral obligation to the industry, that he felt that there was like a need to not... What's the word I want to use? When you water down the value of something by giving it away. He was trying to not do that to the indie gaming scene. So he started charging for them, but not much, and these are not hugely successful games or anything. They don't have marketing behind them. He writes novels. He's written 3 novels. Those are art novels, novelist. But that's not the career. The career is the gimmick. And I think that right now especially as an individual creator on the internet who is supported only by yourself, you need the gimmick. And it's so hard to survive without it. You look at someone like Egoraptor, and people always, complain about how he's gotten swallowed up into Game Grumps because animation wasn't profitable anymore. I don't think that's the only reason that he's done that. Because Egoraptor has just started doing different art. He's said many times that what he's most passionate about is voice acting. More so than animation, more so than Let's Plays or anything else he does, what he likes the most is voice acting. So the man has been doing way more voice acting on the side. He's been in a bunch of video games, he's been in TV shows, he was in Rick and Morty once at the end of season 2. He's pops up all over the place in other people's animations, Then he does these albums like Starbomb, and these are pretty successful in themselves, but this is obviously the art that's coming out of Egoraptor right now. And maybe you don't like it as much as his old art, but whatever. This is what he's passionate about. The Game Grumps is the gimmick. The art is the albums. The art is when he comes out with something weird, And sometimes you're not artistic. And that's one of the biggest problems with, trying to use your art as your career on the internet is, again, unless it's insanely marketable, then you can't make a career out of it. Unless your book, because let's say you can only write a book once every 3 years. You only have a great idea once every 3 years. That book has to sell enough to survive you 3 years, or else you got to have a gimmick to back it up, I look at someone like me, my gimmick is human content machine. That's the gimmick. Because I couldn't find one gimmick that worked well enough for me. I think I'm pretty great at talking endlessly. I'm good at being on podcasts and having interesting conversations, but I haven't figured out how to make it a gimmick podcast that would sustain me. I've never had one project that's successful enough to carry the whole thing. Even the project of the anime analysis, I kind of don't like doing it as a gimmick. I would prefer it was just my art. And that's why, I changed my Patreon so that the career is everything I do, as opposed to what I'm trying to make more artistic. And sometimes the vlogs are artistic. Sometimes the Let's Plays can even be artistic sometimes, if that's what I'm inspired to do, and it's I'm creating a product. But I'm not inspired to make The Asterisk War Sucks every other week, and I'd have to for it to be successful, for it to be the only thing I do is my art. The Asterisk War Sucks would have to make enough money to to hold me up for a whole year in order for that to be the only kind of content I make, but it's not. It's really only as valuable as my gimmick content, so I can't survive off of my art. I need the gimmicks. And I like the gimmicks. I think most people do. I think most people become more okay with themselves once they realize the need for this. Because when you're a starving artist, you're just wondering, you know, what even is my value? Like, if you never succeed as an artist, like, if all you do is try to make art, and it never profits you, you never can find a career in it, it's going to kill your desire to do art. It's going to kill the art. It's going to kill your ability to, you know, to stop working the day job, the gimmick. And you know, if you could find a gimmick that you're actually happy with and that allows you to do art on the side, that's when you really can, like, open up the doors and be like, oh, now I can do whatever art I want because I have this gimmick that I like that's successful and it runs on in the background while I work on all my art. And it doesn't even matter now if the art's really successful. Now you can just do whatever the fuck you want, you know? I got people crying to me about how I haven't made a great analysis video in a while, but that's because I've got a great album I just put out 2 months ago. Most proud I've been of anything I've made in fucking years. You know, album's better than anything coming out on my fucking channel this year. And that's not to knock the things coming out on my channel this year. It's a great album. But that's the art. And it's not profitable. But the gimmick is. You know, so the gimmick keeps running and it keeps allowing that kind of art to happen. But again, for someone like me, I don't have one central gimmick that's strong enough to hold it all together. So the gimmick is do everything. The gimmick's make 1,000 things, you know? And I think it works out pretty well for me. At least for now it does. But I always have to wonder about, like, you know, what happens when some people probably, you know, who try to stick with just doing the art and never have the gimmick, they just kind of disappear, you know? And some examples. After my last video where I was talking about whether or not the Digibro channel is going downhill, there was a great response by the Devu, my editor. He made an audio log about how analysis is not a hose. It's not something that can just be pumped out all the time, because if there's not ideas and things to analyze, then we're just going to repeat ourselves. We're just going to keep repeating ourselves because it's not the kind of content that can just come out all the time, because there's an element of art to it. And if you try to make it a gimmick, it becomes a boring... It's a boring gimmick. Analysis is not a fun gimmick. At least not for me. I'm bored as shit watching boilerplate analysis videos that have nothing new to say. You know, unless you're bringing up something that's going to blow my fucking mind, I'm going to be like, yeah, I mean, you're smart and all, but your video's not entertaining. And I don't want to watch this every day. I don't want to sit through, like, a minutia analysis every single day. I'd rather watch people with some personality, you know? Make your gimmick better. But in any case, his video is great, and he was bringing up Mr. B-Tongue and Mr. Plinkett, two of the best YouTubers of all time, for analysis content. Mr. B-Tongue is a guy who only ever made videos when he had a great idea, and therefore his videos are almost always great. But he, therefore, also has only made like 3 videos in the last 3 years, and hasn't made one in 6 months. He's basically off the grid, because he's not doing a gimmick. He's out there living in the real world. Then you got Mr. Plinkett, who only puts out a video once in a blue moon because he quickly realized that doing Mr. Plinkett videos when he didn't have a great idea for it was a waste of time. So let's just reserve it for when we've got a great idea. And in the meantime, the gimmick, half in the bag. And it's a great gimmick. Really entertaining show. You know, and it's something that can be produced pretty much any time, because it doesn't really require artistic inspiration. It just requires these two guys to go watch a movie, sit down on their set, and record a video out of it, edit it together, and post it up. It's technician work. It's something that you can do as long as you know how to do it. And not a lot of people do. It's not something that just anyone could do, because you need to have that studio space. You need to have the lighting and know how to use it. You need to have the camera work and know how to use it. The audio equipment. You need to know how to edit. You know, they put a lot of work into half in the bag. But it is work. It's not art. And that's fine. It's good. It's good work, you know? I think a lot of my stuff is good work. I enjoy it. I won't pretend I put nearly as much effort into it. My effort is into the constantness of it. That's what defines my career. That's what defines my gimmick, is that it's happening all the time. That there's just hours and hours and hours of it coming out in all kinds of different fields and directions. And you know, and my fan base has so many different sides to it, where there's people who might absolutely love me as their favorite content creator and don't even engage with half of my content, you know, because there's just so fucking much of it that appeals to so many different people. So yeah, that's my point. Gimmick art. You might need both, unless your art is so ludicrously successful that it can pay your way forward. And that's a very small percentage of people. Not because the other people are less talented, but because their talents don't appeal to as much of an audience and just aren't marketable. Don't have any money behind them. So yeah.